But it gives me very great pleasure now to introduce Ruth Spellman, our General Secretary, to talk to you and take a lot of questions, I gather.
Please. Thank you. Thank you, Ron, and thank you to all of you. And I'm just using this because I've only just learned how to use it and I'm showing off. And my daughter said to me, Mum, what are you using pad and paper for? Why don't you use an iPad? So I said, okay. So that's why I've got this. This is your AGM, and I just wanted to thank you for inviting me here, Ron. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I've actually done more speaking engagements in the Eastern region than any other region of the WBA in my 2.5 years with the organisation. And I think it's partly because of how vibrant this region is and how many events you organise and how much you do understand that by working together you can achieve more than if you're all in your little isolated boxes. That you do make a big effort to travel those distances, to be at these events, so that you can plot and scheme and work together around how we do more for our students, how do we deliver value in the WBA, and how do we sustain our own future, really. Because we all know we have to look after each other, don't we? One of the fundamentals of life is, you know, people aren't born waking up and saying we're going to support the WBA. We have to get that message over to people about what we do and how important it is. And your voices, coupled with the voices of the staff and people like Sarah and the regional team, need to come together if we're going to get more new people on board and actually keep the whole thing on the road. Because without education as a country, where are we? If you think about what's happened, the whole story of the 20th century has been about pulling people up through education, giving them access to opportunities they wouldn't have had without the education that they've received. And of course, we all know that education needs to go on throughout life. Most of what you learn, you don't learn at school. We all know that, don't we? And if we're lucky enough, we have opportunities many times to return to learning. And it keeps us fresh, keeps us healthy. For some of us it keeps us employable. And even when we don't want a job anymore, you could, by the way, there's volunteering. And there are many of us who are still volunteering in whatever capacity we can, because we know the joy of giving something back. Because for everyone in here that's giving something back, also you're getting that sense of making a difference. And it's my job as your General Secretary to enable you to make that difference and to feel you're well supported and recognised and acknowledged by the organisation for all the things that you do. So I just wanted to do some reflecting today, because we don't do a huge amount of that actually. It's all about doing, doing, doing. And I thought maybe I'd give you a few reflections and then talk about a little bit about today and tomorrow. So, you know, why do we need the WBA? Well, just a few reminders. We do help our students in all sorts of ways. When I've been around the country talking to people, and when I do the awards, and when we meet people in the classroom and talk to them about their experiences, what strikes me so fundamentally about the WBA is we build confidence. We build the whole person. It's not just something that's being done to them to pass an exam or to get into a job. It's about building their sense of self-worth and their confidence. And we all know that without that confidence, life becomes pretty difficult at all sorts of levels. So that instilling of confidence, enabling the person to feel that they have the skills, the attributes, the desire always to get out there and, you know, to be proactive in their own community, looking after themselves and their families. That confidence is so important. We enable people to communicate. We do a lot of work around really that whole issue of giving people that vital human attribute, which is to be able to communicate. The difference between man and animal is that we communicate. And we communicate all the time in all sorts of different ways. And being able to communicate is absolutely vital, whether it's your written English or your spoken English. We're doing far more than we've ever done in our history around, for example, English as a second language. So we're reaching out to communities where English is the second language and doing something about giving people access to English. We all take it for granted, but there are many people in our community, some of whom are voting UKIP at the moment, you know, who need to be able to speak English in order to participate in society at all. And it's fundamental if they can't. And yet, you know, who's reaching out and doing that? Well, one of the organisations that's doing it and doing it very well is the WEA. I think the other thing to stress is the role we have, which is around building support groups for people. You're in a support group here today. These people are your friends. They're people many of you have known for many years. And we need to make sure that that support group is welcoming to new people. So we've talked about some of the issues around succession today. And I think one of the things we don't always recognise is how difficult it is for people to join something that's already existed for a long period of time and has an identity of its own. So I think what we need to think about is how do we make our support group accessible to people so that A, they know about it, and B, they're welcome when they come. And this isn't just an issue that you as an individual might be facing, it's we as an organisation are facing this issue of raising our profile and including people from a broader cross-section of society. Because we should really be open to all comers. The WBA was never about putting up barriers. It was about creating opportunities for everyone, irrespective of age or social class. And that's still true today as it was 112 years ago. We also discover new abilities and skills. Our job is to develop those things in individuals. We all have them. We may not have the qualifications always to prove it, but we've all got them. And it's about a voyage of discovery. And the thing is, you can learn stuff at any stage, can't you? I've just learned how to knit. I didn't know how to knit. My mother was too busy to teach me how to learn to knit, and they didn't teach it at school. But, you know, in anticipation of being a grandma, I am learning how to knit. And it's a new discovery. And it's actually very calming. You have a busy day, take up a bit of knitting. It's quite nice. I mean, I'm dropping stitches all over the place. I wouldn't like anyone to have to wear any of the products that I'm producing. But knitting's a great therapy almost. You know, it's something to do which isn't involving too much brain matter. Gives you something to do. It makes you sit down. Makes you pay attention. Probably all good things. And we all know that these lessons of learning can be profound as well as simple. So, you know, these lessons around learning, this re-engagement with learning, this access to ability to learn all the way through now, it's absolutely reflected in our manifesto. So I wanted to bring this to life for you a bit today, because our first thing in our manifesto, we've only got 9 asks. We thought, we've got 99, nobody's going to do any of it, are they? But if we've got 9, you know, keep it less than, you know, things you can remember. And the first of those is ensure there is always an opportunity for adults to return to learning. You know, we're all supposed to be having access to 24 hours of TV and however many channels we've got and all the rest of it. We've all got more consumer rights than we know what to do with. What about the right to adult education? What about campaigning for that? What is more important? What gives you a window on the world? Your education. So that's the number one thing. And that's the thing I'm going to be saying to everybody I meet this year. And hopefully there's a lot of people I'm going to meet this year. And some of them might be able to do something about that. So the other thing I just want to highlight is reduce health inequalities, because that's a big theme, I think, for people in this room, for people in the WEA. And one of our themes is health education, health and well-being. It's not just directly actually providing education in health and well-being, it's actually the impact of a WEA course is to increase health and well-being. Just coming to a course, whether it's an art history, or geography, or understanding the archaeology of the area, or getting involved and engaged in a community programme of some kind, it facilitates and improves health and well-being. We know it's good for your health. Somebody needs to tell the government. So we do have an impact in so many different ways, and we've got to get that news out there. Community is also a very big word for the WBA. There's a community, a learning community in this room. There's a learning community in the WBA. And that has to have meaning for our volunteers, for our staff, and for our students. So the learning is not just for our students. We're pulling together tutor groups. We're looking at how tutor groups can learn from each other. And we're pulling together staff groups to learn how we can be better at what we do, better at supporting the work that we do. And I'm pretty much dedicated this year to investing in our staff, in our systems and processes, so that people spend less wasted time doing stuff that actually, you know, to be honest, we could all do with spending less time filling in forms and more time doing the things that we enjoy. So what you'll see in the WBA plans for this year is a big investment in systems processes, Not because I'm in love with systems and processes, because of the opposite. That we need to make things simpler, we need to train people up to use technology more, so that it becomes our servant and not our master. And unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, government is bureaucratic. All governments are, and 84% of the WBA's income comes from government. So whether we like it or not, we have to get smarter at managing that machine of paper that we've got to produce. And to explain to people why they're having to do this, and then to make sure that we're not asking them to do it 3 times. So once is good enough, but that needs to be supported by the right infrastructure and the investment that we need to make in our systems. So there is a lot this year which is really about investing in the WBA, and I make no apologies for that. It's important we invest in ourselves if we're going to be as good as any of the competition. And that's what you'll see a lot of in the planning and the activities this year. I think the other thing we're investing in is partnerships. Partnerships with other organisations that can help us with our 3 challenges. And our 3 challenges, which I think Sarah's already laid down, are educational excellence, sustainability and profile raising. That's as simple and as complicated as it gets. Everything we do needs to either contribute to educational excellence, the sustainability of the organisation, whether it's raising or saving money or investing in people and systems, or it needs to contribute to raising our profile. And we will be measuring out each pound in terms of, is it delivering those things? Because we have to be quite focused, we have to be accountable for the spend, we have to demonstrate we're cost effective and that we're doing things, bigger and better, which are going to satisfy funders, whether they're private sector funders, whether they're coming from the branches or the supporters. This is all money that's hard earned. And we need to respect that and be able to demonstrate that we're doing the best things with that money. Like any other charity, we are a huge educational charity. We're actually the biggest adult community learning charity in the UK. So, that's a responsibility, and we need to be able to demonstrate every pound is paying its way. Now, in the Eastern region, as already been said, we have a really proud tradition of adding value. We do it through the volunteers, we do it through the branches. And so some of the issues I hope we're going to come on to when we have the Q&A, when I stop talking, is really how we can, help you to do the task of raising the money, diversify, succession planning, all the things that have been mentioned today, and really have a bit of a discussion around that, because this is my opportunity also to hear from you. I wanted to reflect on some of the internal challenges we have. I've talked about the dependence, too much dependence really at the moment on government. Now, why is that an issue? Because really government ought to be funding the WBA. Well, it's an issue because to be dependent on one source of income is probably not a good idea. I suppose some of you have been doing pension planning, and I'm starting to think about my pension. You always know you've got to spread your bets. Governments come and go, they have different priorities. So often there's strings attached to government funding. Some of it we may not want to get involved with, some of it we may want to. But to be too dependent on government funding and not having other sources of funding coming in is a big mistake. And it compromises your independence. And sometimes it compromises your credibility. Because government wants people in, it wants people out, it's obsessed with numbers, and we're obsessed with quality. We're obsessed with the quality of the individual experience. And to put a value on that is quite hard from a government perspective. So what we have to do is to demonstrate, yes, we can meet all those government requirements, but we do something else that's special as well, and it's special to the WBA. We create a personal relationship with our students. Our students often go on to become tutors. Our tutors often go on to be volunteers. And we create this lifetime affiliation. And how do you put a value on that? So I think what we've got to make sure is we do pound plus. We spend the pounds wisely, but we also generate additional value and additional worth from the activities and spread of the WBA. The other challenge we've got, as I said, is to make sure that we're providing the support that our tutors and our volunteers and our staff actually need. More and more, is about working smarter. We already work very hard. I don't think we can crank up the hours of work any harder or any faster. People like Sarah already work 24/7 for the WBA. We can't actually ask for much more than that. What we need to do, though, is provide Sarah with the best kit to do the job. And nationally, we need to provide that profile raising, which will enable you to get your message out to your branches and supporters more effectively. So there's stuff we can do to support you to do that. And again, I'm sure more of that will come out in the discussion. Our external challenges I've alluded to already, but the competition for funds out there is fierce. Because of the public sector being now under the cosh, a lot of public sector funding cuts still to come through in terms of their impact, because we don't expect, with a change of government, even if we get one, there to be a spending round which is saying we'll write a blank cheque for adult education. We do not expect that to happen. I think it would be very unrealistic of us to be projecting in that way. We expect that competition for funding to continue. And that's why a lot of the things I've been talking about are really relevant right now. Proving we're good value, showing how we add value, mobilising our supporters, and making sure politicians know that if they were to act in a way which was unhelpful to the WBA, it will have consequences. It will have consequences for them. We've got a parliamentary event next week. We've got Bob Russell coming today. What we're saying to politicians, we've now recruited 75 parliamentary friends from all three sides of the House and both Houses of Parliament. Obviously, we have friends in Scotland and we have friends in Wales, we have friends in Northern Ireland. And what we're trying to say to them all is we're very good value for money. And if you get rid of us, we're going to be a pain in the neck. If you cut our grant, we're going to be a pain in the neck. Because what we do is so important for every community in the UK. And, it's getting that message over, giving you the ammunition, the bullets to fire, giving you at a local level data and information that was going to be useful to you to promote to MPs and to people that you feel might be able to influence our future. And maybe also thinking about the thing we launched last year, which is our ambassador programme. Who do we want to talk to about becoming an ambassador for the WBA? Because it's often what people say about us which makes the most difference. So if it's our tutors or our volunteers or our supporters saying things on our behalf, sometimes it's much more effective than somebody who's a paid member of staff saying it on behalf of the WBA. So if it's, the Vice-Chancellor of the Open University with whom we now have a partnership, if he is saying the WBA is the best thing since sliced bread, that's a fantastic endorsement for us to have. So again, in the Eastern region, in Essex, there were people who could be ambassadors for the WBA. And I'd like to hear about who they might be, because I'm not frightened to go and knock on a few doors. They can only say no, and they might say yes. And I think the more ambassadors we have from different walks of life, the more successful we'll be in getting our message out there. So again, using our students, bringing students into branch meetings and meetings like today, I think we've got some very vocal students, some very articulate students, and we're across a huge spread actually. And by maybe mixing up the regions a bit, so getting some of our Asian ladies down from Slough up to here to talk to you about their experience of the ESOL programme we're running in Slough. I think this is the great thing about the WBA. We've got an example of practically everything, but we're not necessarily sharing it with all of you. And I think the vibrancy and the just sheer cross-section of people we're now helping, we need to get that across to you, so you would actually feel personally you could go and talk to a student, whether they're in the northeast or the southwest or in deepest, darkest Slough. Why not? So the access to the students should be, we should be laying that on a bit more, making it easier for you to talk to people about their personal stories. That's what inspires me when I get up in the morning, is the sorts of people that we're helping. And by how much they are becoming more confident, more able, more employable, healthier, fitter, more able to contribute to the community, and actually our best spokespeople. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the new partnerships we've been developing, because I think they are inspirational. We have this new partnership with the Open University. For example, their biggest faculty is actually their health and social care faculty. And they're now proactively recruiting people who have been with the WBA on a WBA course, improving their maths and their English, so they can enrol as student nurses. And I think that's a great idea, because if you look at the cohort students in the WBA, quite a few do go on into nursing careers, and a key stepping stone for them will be a degree. And one of the ways they can get that degree is the OU. And the OU is saying to us, actually, the main issue is we're cutting an awful lot of people out because they haven't got the maths and the English that they need to come onto an OU degree course. So we're doing something around skill shortage in the nation. We've got a shortage of nurses. We're doing a partnership with the OU, and we're enabling more women, particularly, to go into nursing, because it seems to be mainly females that are enrolling. They're doing their English and their maths, and they're going on to an OU degree course. And I think that's a really good example of how we can be that bridge into learning, back into learning, enable people to improve their skills and contribute. Another partnership I'd like to mention is very recent, and again, it's in the southern region. It's with Lloyds and Lloyds Bank and Scottish Widows. Scottish Widows is the oldest mutual organisation in the UK. And it's, you know, the financial services sector has gone through its travails, hasn't it, recently? Doesn't have the best image. But they are investing quite substantially in community education. And we have a partnership going with them. And what we're doing is we're training some of their volunteers. So we're training their volunteers to be part of the classes to help people do their CVs and do interviews so they can get jobs. And they're paying us to do it. Paying us quite a lot of money actually to do it. So again, you know, these are some of the partnerships we're building. We've got a partnership with Tesco, haven't we, Sarah, which Adam Brasher has been responsible for starting in the Eastern region. And again, it's a good example of working with employers, not because, you know, we're in love with Tesco's or Scottish Widows, but because people like to volunteer, and if we can provide them a bit of training, we can give them that opportunity, and especially if they'll pay us to do it. And I don't need to tell you that, you know, there are opportunities out there. It's a question of the WEA being open to those opportunities and to some extent, you know, making it happen. Bringing the story right back to home, one of the things that I'm doing today is celebrating some of your award winners, and I just wanted to mention some of them. First of all, Roy Parrott, who's the student group award winner for the year in the region. And Roy is using the open arts to help overcome mental health issues in a group, which has had really good results.
He was from Basel and Mind, from our courses in Basel and Mind.
And Ron, you know, I think, you know, one of the things that's most inspiring about Ron is he had himself mental health issues. And what he has learned from that is how to help other people. So it's not academic in that sense, but it is in terms of empowering him and his group to overcome those blockages that can happen. Things in life, you know, as we all know, actually recently for the recent conference season from the Lib Dems conference, they were the ones who really focused on mental health as being a big issue in the UK. It's just as big as physical health. And yet nearly all of our acute care services are about meeting physical health issues. They're not actually about addressing the mental health issues. So Roy, in his own way, is doing something about that, and as a result, he's become a group award winner. This Essex Federation Committee is the Volunteer Group of the Year winner for the region. And with your 38 branches, you have made an absolutely stellar contribution through your lectures, day schools, and all the events which Ron has already talked about. 140 courses? That's quite a lot. Is it not, Ron? Now, that's a combination, it's a combined effort. But, you know, that's it, isn't it? That's why you're so successful. It's because you do work together. You may not always see it because you're sort of not always aware of the wiring that's going on here. But it's precisely because we're working with and through the branches that this is happening, and that the branches themselves are taking so much responsibility for making that happen. Whenever I'm talking to these skills funding agency, I always give an example from this region, and there's a reason for that. Because you're delivering more in terms of volunteer effort and support than any other region. And I want the department to know that when they're giving us money, it is producing other money and effort and dedication from the volunteer movement, which is contributing to the number of students we can help and the number of courses we can run. So you're in every case study, you're there in lights. We've got Orlando Martins, who's won 2 awards for the Tutor Group of the Year and the Olive Cordell Skills for Life Tutor of the Year, which is across the whole of the WEA. And again, for those of you who know Orlando, you know what a story that is. Louise Williams, she's won the Olive Cordell Skills for Life Student of the Year for the region. And Louise, again, inspirational. Why is she inspirational? Because her children find her inspirational. And, you know, a lot of women do study with the WEA because they want to be those great role models for their children. It's a powerful motivator. And what she's found is she's been studying to become a nurse. She's improved her maths and her English skills. So not only is she inspiring her kids and being a great role model for them, she's even able to help them with their homework. What could be more important than that? And it's through such people that not only do they succeed, but many others do. And it's those stories we need to put in the spotlight, it's those stories we need to get in the media. And more our media strategy is trying to pick up on that, and we've got a lot of people now employed too, a few people who are actually doing some very hard work to get the media coverage we need as the WBA. Again, we're not very good at telling people about all of this, but we're now getting £500,000 worth of free advertising every year through the coverage there is of the WBA in the regional and the national media. So it's what, if you were putting an advert in the paper, it would cost you £500,000 to get that coverage that we're getting for free from newspapers, locally, regionally and nationally, that are covering stories about the WBA. And that's double in 4 years, which I think is a pretty phenomenal achievement. We're spending no more on it, but we're getting that different return. And it's through having, developed the links with the local papers, doing events, laying something on, having the stories, ringing them up, giving them a hard time if they're not covering the WBA, making sure we get our share of the action. And we're on the Today programme this year for the first time ever in the WBA's entire history. So we are getting more media coverage, and we need to sort of be a bit more proactive, I think, in letting people know in the organisation what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we can do more. Because it is a sort of escalator. And all stories start with one acorn, don't they? One acorn that you grow. So all I really wanted to conclude by saying is, before I open this up for questions, because I know you've got a few, and I want to lead into that in a second, I want to tell you a personal story about my father, who used to lecture for the WBA in the 1940s in South Wales. And he actually lectured in the prison system. So he was a chemist, and he was teaching prisoners how to run fairly dangerous experiments in Swansea jail. And I said to Dad, you like living dangerously, didn't you? And he laughed, that was really funny. And this is a story though really about me. You see, I'd only been I was 5 years old, I'd been to school for a term. And my dad asked me how I was enjoying it. And I said I didn't particularly like school. But I had learned a lot. And indeed I'd learned so much, there was no need for me to go back. And my dad said, I'm sorry, Ruth, he said, but you'll never know enough. And I've learned that in life, you never know enough. There's always something around the next corner. I've learned just as much from my children as they've ever learned from me, and I've learned a lot from the WA. Okay, so I wanted to say now a few things about some of the issues that have already been raised today. Profile raising. We are doing it, we need to do it more. Any ideas and suggestions that you have for raising a profile, the answer will never be no. The answer might be, we're going to do it this way or that way, or tell me about it, it might need to happen next month or next year, but the answer will never be no. If you've got any ideas for raising the profile of the WBA, we will do them in some shape or form or the other. Okay? I want to know who you know that you think would be a great ambassador for the WBA, and they may have nothing to do with the WBA currently, and I am very happy to approach them. And, you can always think of reasons why people should do things, shouldn't you? So, if there's some local celebrity, somebody who's very effective in your community that you know, a head teacher or whoever it might be your own sons or daughters, it might be people that you know in your community that you think, actually, they'd be a really good ambassador. What we will do for them is give them a couple of opportunities a year to do something for us that they would like to do. So it's an opportunity to get more volunteers as well, isn't it? Yeah? And we will do the administration that lies behind that. And if they say no, that's absolutely fine. This is not about conscription, it's about volunteering. So if you can think of ambassadors, let us know. I think the other thing I was going to say is, if there are things around the manifesto, if you'd like to be sharing this manifesto more widely, we can give you copies of it. It's on the web, it's on our intranet. If you would like to have a petition that's based on the manifesto that you'd like to sign in the region, if there are ways in which you want to distribute this manifesto, just let us know. We will do whatever we can within cost, limits. So I spent 6 months of my life working on this manifesto. I talked to 2,500 people, either online or in person. Government ministers have contributed to this manifesto. It actually is gold dust. There are 9 messages in it and they all have meaning. And we're going to be pressing as many people to support this manifesto as we can. So it is worth spending some time on. This is our entire public messaging for the next 3 years. That's why we invested in it. This is what the WBA stands for. So, you know, if you have an idea about how to promote that, I want to hear it. And really just to say thank you for listening. And over to you for questions.
Questions to Ruth before we follow it up with some brainstorming sessions for a short while in groups. David?
Ruth, do you foresee a time when partnership work will become the primary or indeed the only face of WBA?
I don't think it'll ever be the only face, but it might become the primary face, because I can see that partnership is something we do really, really well. We work with and through local community groups all over the country. It's what we're known for, actually. It's never the WBA working solo, it's the WBA working with other people. And I think that's a huge strength. But we do need to have our own inner core, which is definably the WBA. We need to have that first-class view of what education is for and about, which is definably the WBA. And that can't be diluted by lots of other missions and purposes. And in that sense, we will always be rooted into community, but with a distinct and definite identity of our own. We need both, and we greedily want both, because to be honest, that's the only way we will get the kind of commitment to adult education that we need. And I think the passion of our cause will convert more partners, being an easy partner to work with, you know, welcoming other people's ideas and views, not being so convinced all the time that we're doing absolutely everything right, you know, taking on board views and suggestions about how we do things better. I think that's also an area of partnership that I'm keen to explore. And being challenged ourselves, you know, because the WBA has survived for 112 years because it's been open to challenge. You know, we've changed, we've moved, we've shifted with the times, but we've also been true to our fundamental values. And it's that combination of things, I think, which is so important.
Any more questions to Ruth? Ross?
I'd like to ask you just to elaborate a little bit on the publicity and raising the profile. It's something we as a branch find very difficult. I certainly get people who say they've never heard of WBA. And if people are not into lifelong learning, WBA, the Workers' Education Association is quite enough putting
Yeah. Yeah.
But perhaps you just elaborate.
Well, one of the ways that I think we can do it is just to use the WBA more on our buildings, on our courses, on our literature, everywhere. So those initials. I used to run an organisation called Investors in People, IIP, and that became very, very well known. And it became very well known because we had our logo everywhere. It was on government buildings, it was on... People used to display their logo. They were an IIP organisation. Well, we want all of our teams and projects and programmes to be saying we are a WBA programme first. We deliver X, Y and Z, but we are a WBA programme, and for those letters to be much more publicly known. And I think the way I try and explain it to people is we educate adults. That's what we do. We are the Workers' Educational Association, that's our legal status, our charitable identity, but what we actually do is we educate adults, the WEA. You know, there are lots of other people that do other things, but that's what we do. And I think it's about talking about the WBA and just explaining it in a simple way that you can personalise it yourself and just say that's what we do, and it's all age, it's relevant to people who are learning a skill, a language, It's relevant to people who want a pastime or an interest in life to get them out of the home in the evening, who are interested in the WBA. It's a social activity, and it's relevant all through your life. We educate adults. If you think about what is going on in the education system at the moment, something like 75% of the resources are going into young people under 19. But all the research tells you that the majority of your learning takes place in the rest of your life. So, the burden on adult educators is to provide those opportunities, and we are about raising money, support, endeavour to enable all adults to have that access.
Do you work with NICE?
We do work with NICE. Yeah, we do. We work a lot with other charities as well, and smaller community organisations as well. And those tend to be regionally led partnerships. So again, if there are regional partnerships that you think actually, it would be good if we were working with, then again, put it back to us and the team to think about, well, maybe we should. Maybe we should at least tell them what we're doing, even if they don't want to come and work with us, because they may actually say to some of their clients and some of their people, actually, have you considered a course with the WBA? So, for example, in GP surgeries, how many GPs put on the prescription pad, this person could do with an adult education course in health and fitness, but we could be enabling that to happen. How many GPs have got the strength of will to actually say that to a patient? You need some health education, and yet we know that might be far more effective than putting them on more pills. And that, we know for a fact, by our own research, that the health education courses are really, really effective. So why don't GPs recommend health education? Probably because they don't know it exists in their own area. So, that's definitely one set of doors that we should be knocking on. Why would it just be the Department for Business Innovation and Skills that is promoting the WBA? What about the Department of Health, and what about GPs? And again, there's a huge amount of emphasis now with all the new arrangements being set up on these GP consortia. And again, a lot of emphasis on preventative, preventing ill health. But what are the resources going into promoting health education? Virtually zero. So that's, that's a big challenge. And again, if there are opportunities in your area, we could be doing more. Let's hear about them. And these are the points that we need to be talking about.
Annette.
Can I just say thank you very much for that vision? That's brilliant.
Thank you.
Andrew.
Ruth, you put a good passion across very, very well. One great bit of free publicity we could do, if the WA could provide that in one page, that all the local people could put in their local newsletters, that would be a fantastic way of getting some very free publicity, but with the same message universally. It's very difficult locally to put your own message. We've got a common message we can put in. It would be quite easy and cheap to do.
Okay. Yes, we'll do it.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Betty.
Some of my happiest memories was 9 years with WEA. I went with the University of London on summer schools.
Yes.
And then the year, unfortunately, when my husband died, and I always thought that was there ahead of me, they stopped doing it. Can you not encourage universities or get into university and bring that back? Because then we did build communities, because the same people seem to go every year from other WEAs, and we had that sense of being able to learn on campus, and it was most useful there.
One of the things we asked for in the manifesto is for universities to have more open access programmes in summer schools. It's one of our asks. So yes, the OU, because they can do it and they have a big widening access agenda, but a lot of universities are now very, very narrowly focused, and their funding streams don't work for us at the moment. So if they change the funding formula and the widening access funding to be about adults as well as young people, we could change the way they operate. So we are talking to the Office for Fair Access, OFFA as it's called, about whether they can be saying that it's recommended practice for universities to have a summer school running for adults, as well as be focusing on young people. And it also helps the young people if there are adults in the university.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if you think about what we're investing in universities, and 50% of people, even today, I mean, in my day, 4% of the people went to university. Today it's 50%, but that still means that 50% don't go to university, and yet we all pay for them.
That's right.
So if you think of all the educational resources in the community, the schools that are closed at weekends, the colleges that are closed at weekends, and the universities that are only really dedicated to 21, up to 21, and possibly some graduate students, but, you know, that's been declining actually in recent years. Apart from overseas, which is another element. But it's all about chasing fees now.
Yeah.
And what we have to do is kind of try and change some of that psychology back to what the role of the university actually is. You know, which is about encouraging people of all descriptions to achieve their most potential.
Yes, because it's like a holiday with learning attached, isn't it? That's what it's
So I
about.
think, you know, and these issues aren't really seriously debated. I mean, and that's the real frustration that we have, is that we do try and make these points, and again, it's trying to get the MPs engaged and involved, and also to keep those premises open at weekends, so that the colleges should be open at weekends, the schools should be open at weekends. Why not? Where we do have parents involved in schools, it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference to the pupil achievement as well, and at university level as well. Because why would there be this limit? Why is this artificial limit on what we're using university resources for?
So we could say, open your seminar rooms and classrooms to us, and we'll provide the funding.
Yeah, because the thing is, you know, with the WEA, we don't have infrastructure, right? We use other people's buildings, don't we? Wouldn't it be great that in every region we had a significant presence in school? And what does that say to young people? It says learning continues. What does it enable the mums and dads to do to be involved with school, as well as to benefit their own learning? And what does it say to the government? Well, actually, we've got resources in communities that we're not properly using. You know, one of the most powerful things I ever did was, in my life, was go to a school in Northern Ireland, where I was visiting, and this school was run in Derry, and a very deprived part of Derry. And the head teacher was a lovely lady, Geraldine Keegan, who believed that the school wasn't just there for the kids. She believed it was there for the community, and she had it open every weekend. And she had employers queue in to employ her girls that came out of that school. And it was a sink school when she took it over. I mean, it took all that, there was a grammar school and a high-grade comprehensive in the same area. This was the sink school. She had employers queuing up to employ those girls because they, you know, they had their parents in there helping as classroom teachers and as classroom assistants. The parents themselves were very engaged with the learning of the kids. And the school was very open, and it was an open space for adults to learn as well. And so the example was there. And she completely revolutionised that school. And it's still going. She's retired many years ago, but that school is still going strong. It still wins all the awards in the book, and it caters to one of the most deprived areas of Great Britain. So, you know, and it shows what can be done in a community if you get the adults involved. So, and if we're running classes for adults, you know, in school, that's a powerful example, isn't it, to young people. More powerful than, you know, telling them that they're going to need these skills when they leave school. There's no reality. But if their parents are involved, I think it makes a massive difference. And we all know that the biggest determinant of a child's future is their parent. So if we get parents engaged, fantastic impact.
You take one more question for Ruth, please. Catherine?
It's just a comment, really, but you can't force schools to open their premises to the community. If the head teacher does not want to do, that's the end of it.
Yeah, but the head teacher doesn't own the investment in the school. You know, the head teacher is usually there for 5 or 6 years. They don't own the school premises. You know, and I think there are ways in which schools can be incentivised to keep their doors open at weekends. And if the Secretary of State so wanted, that could be what is recommended practice. And many more schools would choose to do it because they would see the impact it was having on the achievement levels in the school. So if you are really measuring the motivation, the absence, the performance of kids in school, and by engaging the parents you get higher scores, there's plenty of incentive for the school. But what you've got to do is create a sort of system that actually recognises that as being something that's really worthwhile to do. And that the school teachers and the school head does not own the investment we've made in schools over many, many years. That is owned by the nation. And how are we using that investment currently? And just asking the question, I think, prompts some good thoughts. I agree, it's very difficult to go down the coercive line, but you probably wouldn't need to. It's a question of actually getting a Secretary of State actually believes in this and working with them to make it happen.
We've got some stories about how
Thank
you
you.
make it happen. That would be good.
Yeah? Yeah.
Had local experience in Kelvedon and fearing particularly difficulty there. Thank you very much, Ruth, for answering those questions. Maybe another opportunity later or even during the groups. Now,